So, hello. In this video, we are going to start off with a new chapter of biology, which is cell, the unit of life. So this chapter is essentially a very important chapter, like it's very fundamental. Because the concepts used in this chapter, the concepts that we study in this chapter are used throughout biology. Throughout biology, the concepts are used. So we'll go line by line and I'll explain each line by line and understand whatever is written in the NCRT. For now, let's go through the overview of the chapter. Let's take an overview of the chapter, like what are we going to learn, like in the whole chapter, what are we looking forward to in the chapter. Okay, so first off, we'll understand what a cell is. First off, we'll learn what is a cell, right? This is the topic list. So first off, we are going to learn what a cell is. We'll describe a cell. So as you know, there are so many living organisms in the whole world, and obviously there will be as many different types of cells as well, right? As many or even more, because we humans, like just take the example of us humans. The human species is one, like it's just one species, like you yourself are just one human, but inside you there are so many different types of cells, right? There's RBCs, there's leukocytes, there's immunity cells, there's red blood cell, RBC, the red blood cell, and there's so many different types of cells, right? There's brain neurons, nephrons, and different organs will have different cells, and there's just so many different cells in just a single human. So imagine imagine the number of organisms. Think of the number of organisms, like different species on earth, and each of those species will have so many more different types of cells within them. So it's very important for us to, if we want to learn biology, it's very important for us to learn what a cell is. So this chapter, essentially in this chapter, we are going to learn, get a general overview of the cell. Okay, so we'll start off by understanding what a cell is, like a general definition of what a cell is, and then we move on to the cell theory. Cell theory, essentially, cell theory is like, it consists of 2 points, which is essentially true for every living organism. So this cell theory, so like, see, even if the diversity is so large, the diversity is very large, right? Because different types of cells are there. I just explained the diversity is just huge. Even then, there are a few common points. There are a few common areas where all the cells are common, like it's common to all the cells. Do you feel me? So that is what we are going to learn in the cell theory. Then we'll get a general overview of the cell, like what the cell organelles are, what is within a cell, what is a nucleus of a cell. All these things we learn in this, and then we move on to the major classification of cells, which are prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, and we'll individually go into what prokaryotic cells are, the different types of organelles in prokaryotic cells, what eukaryotic cells are, the different types of organelles in eukaryotic cells. And essentially, till topic 8.4, the chapter is like, you can say, a very small chunk of the chapter, like till topic 8.4. And in topic 8.5, the whole topic 8.5 is like a major chunk, because eukaryotic cells are very complex in nature, and most of the living organisms on earth, not most of the complex living organisms, I must say. So the most of the complex living organisms, like animals, plants, most of these complex living organisms are made up of eukaryotic cells, whereas prokaryotics are more of the primitive type of cells. We'll go in depth. So I hope you understand what we are looking forward, like I hope you get the idea of what we are going to learn in this chapter. Okay, so I'll be using this paper to explain anything that I need you to visualize or something. So this is just there, and we'll be majorly focusing on the NCRT, because, and also I believe that you shouldn't be taking much notes, because NCRT text itself is like a notebook, because you read the chapter like 10 times, and that's how you are supposed to understand these things. Like, I mean, it's very important. Okay, so let's start. When you look around, you see both living and non-living things. You must have wondered and asked yourself, what is it that makes an organism living, or what is it that an inanimate thing does not have, which a living thing has? So the answer to this is the presence of the basic unit of life, the cell, in all living organisms. So inanimate things, they are essentially saying, what does inanimate mean? Inanimate means non-living. So they are saying that non-living things don't have cells, and living things, living organisms have cells, and that is a very basic difference between living and non-living things. So all organisms are composed of cells. Some are composed of a single cell and are called unicellular organisms, while others, like us, are composed of many cells and are called multicellular organisms. So essentially, a single-celled organisms, if an organism has only a single cell within them, they are called unicellular organisms. If that organism has many cells within them, more than a single cell, they are called multicellular organisms. Basic definitions. Okay, let's move on to topic 8.1, which is, what is a cell? Now, what is a cell? Like, we have seen many cells. I mean, we have seen many cells, but we have not individually seen many cells, because like whenever we get a cut, let's say we are getting a cut, we got a cut, okay, and even a single drop of blood, even just a single drop of blood contains like thousands and thousands of red blood cells within that single drop of cell. So single drop of blood. So we have seen cells in the form of blood or any other thing, but we have not seen individual cells, and that is what we are trying to learn here. So what is a cell? Unicellular organisms are capable of independent existence and performing the essential functions of life. So they are saying that unicellular organisms are capable of two things, which is independent existence, means they can exist without the help of any other organism, and they can independently exist, that's true, okay, and perform the essential functions of life. So they can also perform essential functions of life, and that is, I think it is correlated, right? Because if the unicellular organisms can't perform essential functions of life, they can't exist independently, right? So they are existing independently because that is also a reason is that they're existing independently is because they can perform essential functions of life, and also since they are performing essential functions of life, they are capable of independently existing. Anything less than a complete structure of a cell does not ensure independent living. Okay, true. So they are making it very clear that cell is the smallest unit, like it is the smallest thing that can independently exist. That is what they are trying to explain here. So anything lesser than a complete structure of a cell, anything lesser than a cell, does not ensure independent living. Hence, cell is the fundamental structural and functional unit of all living organisms. So this is a very important line. You must have probably heard it like many times. This cell is a fundamental, functional and structural unit of life. So we need to also understand why is it structural and why is it functional unit of life. Well, it is structural because the structure of any organism is made up of units. The unit of cell, the smallest unit is essentially cell, because anything lesser than a cell cannot ensure independent living. So for a living organism, its structure, for even us humans, our structure is essentially made up of many units, many of these cells, and hence it is the structural unit of life. Hence cell is the structural unit of life. And why is it functional unit of life? Functional because it performs essential functions of life. Since cells can perform in our body, just think about it, in our body, from respiration, from breathing, from digestion, from circulation, everything is done by cells, and that is essentially all the essential functions of life is performed by cells, and hence it is the functional unit of life, right? Hence it is the functional unit of life. And not just cells, it is also the products of cells. Like for example, let's say our stomach, right? Gastric juices. So these gastric juices are in themselves not cells. but they are products of cells. It means they are produced by cells, right? And which is very important for our digestion. So that is like digestion, which in turn leads to energy production, right? If we don't digest our food, we won't be able to produce energy. Hence that digestion part is very important, like it's like an essential function of life. Okay, so I hope you understood why cell is the structural and functional unit of life. Sir Anton von Leeuwenhoek first saw and described a live cell. So he first saw and described a live cell. So a dead cell was described by it was seen first. Dead cell was seen by Sir Robert Hooke. Sir Robert Hooke was the person who first saw a cell, which was the dead cork cell. Okay, I'll write it down because it's not written here, but it's a very common information, right? Okay, Sir Robert Hooke was the first person to see a cell, first scientist to see a cell, first to observe a cell. And he saw the dead cork cell, right? Dead cork cell. So essentially this cork is essentially like the bark. It's made up of the bark of a tree or any plant. So it is dead. That is why here they have made it very clear that Sir Anton von Leeuwenhoek first saw and described a live cell. Okay, so a live cell was first saw and described by Sir Anton von Leeuwenhoek. A dead cell, or if in general someone is asking you who first saw a cell, that is essentially Sir Robert Hooke, because he was the first person to see a cell, which was the dead cork cell. Okay. Sir Robert Brown later discovered the nucleus. So the nucleus is within the cell. Okay, a nucleus is within the cell. So the invention of the microscope and its improvement leading to the electron microscope revealed all the structural details of the cell. Okay, that's true, because as and when we progress through technology, as and when we evolve through technology, we get clearer information, right? That's true. So greater microscopic powers, more in depth we can go and see what is going on at the cellular level, right? So cell theory also called cell doctrine. Cell theory is also called cell doctrine. And as I said, it is like a theory which is true for every cell, no matter how diverse the cell, like living world, no matter how diverse the living world, no matter how diverse any cell is with respect to any other cell, the cell theory is true for every cell. Okay, so these are a few points, very important points. Okay, in 1838, Sir Matthias Schleiden, a German botanist, examined a large number of plants and observed that all plants are composed of different kinds of cells which form tissues of the plant. Okay, so plants are composed of different kinds of cells which form tissues of the plant. Similar cells form tissues. Different cells form different tissues. At about the same time, Sir Theodore Schwann, in 1839, a British zoologist, studied different types of animal cells and reported that cells had a thin outer layer which is today known as the plasma membrane. Okay, so at around 1839, Sir Theodore Schwann, a British zoologist, studied different types of animal cells and reported that cells had a thin outer layer which is today known as the plasma membrane. Okay, true. He also concluded, based on his studies on plant tissues, that the presence of cell wall is a unique character of plant cells. Okay, is a unique character of plant cells. Well, right now we know that this is not true. Because cell wall is essentially present in most of the system, most of the living world. Animal cells don't have cell walls, and some bacteria also don't have cell walls, but most of the living creatures, living organisms have cell walls, and they have different composition in cell walls. Like bacteria will have different composition of cell walls, means like composition meaning like it will be made up of different things, like in plants the cell wall will be made up of a different chemicals, made up of different chemicals. In fungi it will be made up of different chemicals. In bacteria it will be made of different chemicals, but mostly all of the living organisms, living cells have cell wall. Okay, so he concluded, Sir Theodore Schwann, based on his studies on the plant tissues, so he only studied plant tissues, that the presence of cell wall is a unique character of plant cells. So here they are trying to imply that animal cells don't have cell wall, because Sir Theodore Schwann had reported that animal cells have a thin outer layer which is the plasma membrane. So on the basis of this, Sir Schwann proposed the hypothesis that bodies of animals and plants are composed of cells and products of cells. So this is a very important point. So Sir Theodore Schwann proposed the hypothesis that bodies of animals and plants are composed of cells and products of cells. So what is a hypothesis? Hypothesis, theory, law, everything is different. Hypothesis is essentially unproven, it's not proved, and theory and law, essentially they are not theory but law. It's proved. Theory and law, these things have some substantial evidence and experimentation backed up. They have the experiments backed up. So but whereas these hypotheses are just like they're just unproven, they're unverified statements. Okay, so Sir Schwann proposed the hypothesis that bodies of animals and plants are composed of cells and products of cells, and then Sir Schleiden and Sir Schwann together formulated the cell theory. Okay, a very important line. This theory, however, did not explain as to how new cells were formed. This theory, however, did not explain how new cells were formed, because what was the theory? The theory was that the bodies of animals and plants were composed of cells and products of cells. See, this line is true. It's true. Like literally every living organism is composed of cells and products of cells. As I said, right, products of cells also. They're like gastric juices. They're not cells in themselves, but they are products of cells. And and also one more important point that they said here, they said that anything less than a complete structure of a cell does not ensure independent living. So anything that is living must have at least a single cell, right? Hence this is true, this is very true, that that the bodies of animals and plants are composed of cells and products of cells. So this is true. But however, this theory did not explain as to how new cells were formed, right? How new cells were coming into the world, that this theory did not explain that. So Sir Rudolf Virchow in 1855 first explained that cells divided and new cells are formed from pre-existing cells. This is a very important point. So he said, Sir Rudolf Virchow said, omnis cellula e cellula. He said that cells divided and new cells are formed from pre-existing cells. So let's say there is a pre-existing cell. So let's say there is a cell that exists, and then this cell will divide to form new cells. So essentially this explains how new cells are formed. So as I said, these points are essentially the points that are true for every living cell, every living organism. It's true for every living cell, no matter how diverse the cell may be, but these points are true for every one of them, and that is why the cell theory was introduced. So cell theory, as understood today, so I missed a line. Sir Rudolf Virchow modified the hypotheses of Sir Schleiden and Schwann to give the cell theory a final shape. Cell theory, as understood today, is, there are 2 points in it. All living organisms are composed of cells and products of cells, and all cells arise from pre-existing cells. It's very true. Very true. These 2 points are true for every living cell in the world, despite the huge diversity and difference between them. Okay, I hope you understood till here. Let's move on to topic 8.3, which is an overview of a cell. Right? Overview of a cell. So in general, how cells are, that is what we are going to learn here. You have earlier observed cells in an onion peel or a human cheek under the microscope. Yeah, true, I've seen an onion peel. It's like the purple colored onion peel cells. It's very beautiful under the microscope, and it is like in the syllabus, so most probably everyone has seen it. Let us recollect their structure. The onion cell, which is a typical plant cell, has a distinct cell wall as its boundary, outer boundary, and just within it is the cell membrane. Just within it is the cell membrane. Okay, so they're saying that a cell wall has a distinct. So sorry, not a cell wall, a plant cell. Let's say this is a plant cell. It has a, let's say this is a plant cell. It has a distinct outer cell wall, and just within it is the cell membrane, which is the plasma membrane, right? Cell membrane or the plasma membrane. Now later on we will also study that in between these two there is a middle lamellae in plant cells, but okay, let's just keep it for the later part. Where are we? So the cells of the human cheek have an outer membrane as the delimiting structure of the cell. So outer membrane, as we learned here, is the plasma membrane, because cheek cells are essentially animal cells, and Sir Theodore Schwann reported that animal cells have a thin outer layer, which is delimiting membrane is the plasma membrane. So this outer membrane is the plasma membrane. So inside each cell is a dense membrane bound structure called the nucleus. It's dense and a membrane bound structure. Now what is a membrane bound structure? It's like let's say this is a cell. We saw that this is a cell. Inside the cell there are structures that have a different membrane around them. So that is like a different compartment. It's like a different compartment, right? Compartment surrounded by a membrane. So it's like a distinct compartment. So inside each cell is a dense membrane bound structure called a nucleus, and this nucleus contains the chromosomes, which in turn contain the genetic material DNA. Now this is a very important line. Maybe most of you will probably understand what they are trying to say here, that chromosomes which in turn contain genetic material. But if you do not understand what is written here, I'll try to explain it. But in detail we are going to learn about it in the class 12th chapter, which is molecular basis of inheritance. Very good chapter, right? So they are saying that there is a cell, and in that cell there is a nucleus. It's a distinct membrane bound nucleus is there. Distinct membrane bound nucleus is there, and in that nucleus there is genetic material. What are they saying? Contains chromosomes, which in turn contain genetic material. Okay, chromosomes are essentially packed genetic material. Okay, packed genetic material. So in general, if I am taking the whole length, if I am taking a cell and taking the genetic material out of the cell and expanding and just literally laying down the DNA across the room, I'll see that the DNA extends to approximately 2 meters in length. In length, the DNA of each cell, the genetic material of each cell approximately lines up to 2 meters in length. Now imagine 2 meters. Some humans themselves don't have 2 meters height. That length has to be condensed into a cell which is so small, and not just a cell. Within the cell, it has to be condensed into the nucleus. So that means there is extensive condensation. So condensed genetic material is essentially chromosome. They're called chromosomes. Condensed genetic material, which is the condensed DNA, are called chromosomes. And there are many chromosomes in cells, and it depends on what type of cells you're looking. Different cells will have different number of chromosomes, and chromosomes are essentially condensed form of DNA. Chromosomes contain like proteins, and also contain the genetic material, which is DNA, right? So that is the difference between what DNA and chromosomes. Like they're almost the same things, they're just a condensed form of DNA. So this nucleus contains chromosomes, which in turn contain the genetic material DNA. So that, I hope you understood what this line means. Cells that have membrane bound nuclei are called eukaryotic, whereas cells that lack a membrane bound nucleus are called prokaryotic. So here there is a definition. Okay, they're just defining some terms here. They're saying that eukaryotic, the word itself is explaining things to you. Okay, the word itself is explaining things to you. You means true, and carry on translates to nucleus. Okay, U means true and carry-on translates to nucleus, and prokaryote, as you might have guessed, pro means primitive. Primitive carry-on means like it's like a primitive nucleus. So a true nucleus, wait a sec. So pro means primitive and carry-on means nucleus. Okay, so primitive nucleus and true nucleus. So true nucleus will have membrane around it and a primitive nucleus will have no membrane around it. And based on this, cells in general can be divided as eukaryotic cells and prokaryotic cells. Okay. In both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, a semi-fluid matrix called cytoplasm occupies the volume of the cell. A semi-fluid matrix occupies the volume of the cell. So this is the reaction arena of the cell, meaning all the important essential functions, all the important essential reactions that help in the living functions, right? All the important reactions that happen in a cell happen in the cytoplasm of a cell, right? Because it occupies most of the volume of the cell. So the whole volume, so see, this whole area, let's just say if it was in 3D, this whole space is not made of air, it's not containing air, it has a thick matrix which is cytoplasm, and that is where all the reactions occur. Okay, like you can take the example of us humans, like we, like inside the skin, like what is engulfed in the skin, there is blood, right? So somewhat like blood. So in a cell, within a cell, most of the cell is essentially cytoplasm. All of the cell is essentially cytoplasm, and within the cytoplasm there are different organelles. Now organelles are essentially, as I have written here, organelles are they translate to little organs. Okay, so you can think of organs as essentially little organs, small organs. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so the cytoplasm is the main arena of cellular activities, means all the important cellular activities, all the cellular activities essentially happen in the cytoplasm only. In both plant and animal cells, various chemical reactions occur in it to keep the cell in the living state. So every chemical reaction that happens to keep the cell in the living state occurs in the cytoplasm. Essentially everything happens in the cytoplasm. Besides the nucleus, the eukaryotic cells have other membrane-bound distinct structures called organelles. So other than the nucleus, which is already membrane-bound in eukaryotic, the eukaryotic cells have other membrane-bound distinct organelles. So other organelles are also there. So as I said, organelles are essentially little organs. They translate to little organs. They are parts of the cell that perform specific functions. So the organelles are essentially parts of the cell that perform specific functions. So what are organs in us humans? Let's say, for example, for us humans, like brain doing most of the thinking. So a specific function, brain is doing a specific function, the heart is doing pumping blood, so it's doing a specific function, the lung is doing a specific function. So these things are doing specific functions. So in eukaryotic cells also, like let's just say something is there is secretion of some enzyme. So in the cell there will be a particular organelle for that. Let's say there is DNA is being translated, for that there is a specific organelle for that. So those distinct structures are called organelles. Okay, so like for example, the endoplasmic reticulum, the Golgi complex, lysosomes, mitochondria, microbodies, and vacuoles. So these are all organelles in the eukaryotic cells. So these are eukaryotic cells. Only eukaryotic cells have membrane-bound organelles, whereas prokaryotic cells don't have membrane-bound organelles. Ribosomes are non-membrane bound. So we missed a point. The prokaryotic cells lack such membrane-bound organelles. Okay, I just said that prokaryotic cells lack such membrane-bound organelles. Ribosomes are non-membrane-bound organelles found in all cells, both eukaryotic and prokaryotic. So So you understood what's written here? They're saying that although prokaryotic cells lack membrane bound organelles, ribosomes are present in both eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. Within the cell, ribosomes are found not only in the cytoplasm but also within two organelles. So within the cell, which cell are we talking about here? Eukaryotic or prokaryotic? Obviously eukaryotic, because they are saying ribosomes are found not only in the cytoplasm but also within two organelles, and organelles, membrane bound organelles, are found only in eukaryotic cells. Hence we are talking about eukaryotic cells here. Within the cell, ribosomes are found not only in the cytoplasm but also within the two organelles, chloroplasts in plants and mitochondria on the rough ER. Rough ER. ER is essentially endoplasmic reticulum that we have just read. Rough ER. So there are two types of ER, which is smooth ER and rough ER. We'll learn about that in this chapter itself. So the animal cells contain another non-membrane bound organelle called centrosome, which helps in cell division. So centrosome is essentially another non-membrane bound organelle. So animal cells contain that. Plant cells don't have centrosome, and only animal cells have centrosome. Centrosome is we'll also learn about centrosome in the eukaryotic cells topic of eukaryotic cells. Centrosome are essentially centrioles surrounded by pericentriolar amorphous pericentriolar material. So it's an important organelle used for it's used in cell division, very important in cell division. Okay, so cells differ greatly in size, shape and activities. Okay, that's true. Cell differs greatly in size, shape and activities. For example, mycoplasma. The smallest cells are only mycoplasma are the smallest cells. They are only 0.3 micrometers in length. So micrometer is essentially 10 raised to minus 6 meter. So that is the conversion. 1 micrometer. 1 micrometer is essentially 10 raised to minus 6 meters. That is the conversion. They're saying that cells greatly differ in size, shape and activities. Why do they greatly differ? Because based on different activities, based on the type of activities that the cell is doing, the cell will have different shapes, right? So that the activities can be done more efficiently. That's more important. So for example, mycoplasma, the smallest cells are only 0.3 micrometers in length, while bacteria could be 3 to 5 micrometers. So the mycoplasmas are essentially cells in themselves. Mycoplasmas are actually bacteria. They are cells. Mycoplasma are cells, but what I was trying to say was mycoplasma are essentially a type of bacteria themselves, and they are just trying to express that mycoplasma, the smallest cells, are 0.3 micrometers in length approximately, while bacteria could be 3 to 5 micrometers in length. So what is the main point here is that these numbers 0.3 micrometer and 3 to 5 micrometer, they're not important because they are always in a range. Like we can say that the average height of humans is essentially 4 feet to 6 feet, but does that mean that there are no humans below 4 feet, or does that mean there are no humans above 6 feet? That's not true, right? There are it's just a general range. This 3 micrometer to 5 micrometer, it's just a general range. You don't need to remember it word to word, like the range. Okay, it's not important because the range will change in the coming pages. This range itself will change. They'll just say 1 to 2 micrometers. So it just depends. It's not set and stone. Okay, so the largest single isolated cell is the egg of an ostrich, and the smallest is essentially, we just read, mycoplasma, which is a type of bacteria. Among multicellular organisms, human red blood cells are about 7 micrometers in diameter. Nerve cells are some of the longest cells, and so these are very important. Like I just explained, right? The size and shape and all these things depend on the type of activities that the cell is doing. So let's just say that human red blood cells, what kind of shape do they have? In this figure, let's see, they have a biconcave shape, right? Round and biconcave shape. Why do they have a round and biconcave shape? That is because so that they can carry more oxygen, right? They can carry more oxygen. Why do these white blood cells, they don't have any particular shape? they don't have any particular shape. They can change their shape. Now amoeboid in shape, you can say amoeboid. Why do they say amoeboid? Because amoeba also changes shape. So amoeboid in shape, you can say. So why do they have amoeboid shape? Because they need to engulf the pathogens. So for engulfing pathogens, they should be able to change their shape, right? So that they can engulf the pathogen. That is why they have this shape. Now about nerve cells. Nerve cells, why are they so long? They are so long and branched so that the electrical signals can travel long distances quickly. Sorry. So essentially, every message in our body, like I am trying to move my finger, I'm trying to move my hand here, everything is essentially is going into my brain and then coming back to my hand. So it's like a long distance to travel. Sorry. Sorry. uh, okay, so we were at like nerve cells, right? Nerve cells are essentially very long and branched. And why are they long and branched? Because they have a particular function, like means all the electrical signals in our body, every message that goes into a brain or the spinal cord is essentially carried by these nerve cells themselves, right? So if their nerve cells are very short, that means you need a large number of nerve cells, and the message, the what do you say, the electrical signal will take a longer time to travel from one place to the other. But if we have a long and well branched nerve cell, it will take lesser time to the electrical signal will reach need lesser time to reach the brain or the specified site where it has to reach. Hence it is long and branched. So there are very specific reasons why the shape of the cell is like that. It is because of the particular activity that cell is doing. Okay, so we were at yeah, cells also could greatly vary in their shape. True, they may be disc-like, polygonal, columnar, cuboid, thread-like, or even irregular. The shape of the cell may vary with the function waveform. See, that's what I was trying to explain. The shape of the cell may vary with the function they perform. So essentially, they'll be modified. The shape of the cell will be such that the function that they perform is being performed very efficiently. Okay. So let's end the first episode here till prokaryotic cells. In the next one we'll do prokaryotic cells. In the next one we'll do prokaryotic cells, and till eukaryotic cells. So the whole prokaryotic cells we'll finish in the next episode, and then from eukaryotic cells we'll do a few pages, one to organelles, and then like that. I think it'll take around 5 or 6 episodes. Yeah, I think it'll take 5 or 6 episodes to finish the lecture. So this was just an introductory lecture of what we are going to learn in this chapter. What we are going to learn, we learned what a cell is, we learned the cell theory, what the cell theory is, then we learned the overview of a cell, general overview of a cell, and then we are going to tomorrow, or in the next episode, we are going to study the prokaryotic cells, like what prokaryotic cells are, all those things. Okay, I hope you understood everything that I have explained here. Okay, try to understand what is being taught. Okay, like try to understand what is being, don't try to memorize things, like just try to understand. Okay, that makes a lot of it makes a lot of sense to understand rather than just memorizing. Okay, thank you, have a nice day.